Hey everyone, welcome back to MagicLinks Tea Time. I am Brian from the MagicLinks team. Today we are going to be joined with Lauren Ashley Beck. So just give me a few minutes. Let's go ahead and get her on. I hope everyone's having a good day so far. I'm gonna try to move this down a little. So for anyone that's new to MagicLinks Tea Time, every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific, we are joining different leaders of our community, Black leaders that are really helping us to shed light on a lot of different perspectives and points of view. We know that there's a lot of things to cover, and so, as much as we're trying to educate ourselves, we also realize that there's a lot that is better to just hear firsthand. And with that, let's go ahead and get Lauren on. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Can you hear me?
Oh, great. Yeah. I don't
Uh,
have my air, okay, so it's like I'm still trying to test it out.
yeah, I haven't gotten on the AirPod train yet, so we're in this together.
Okay, great. We're in it. All right.
Uh,
Well, oh, happy Friday. Happy
happy,
4th.
thank you. My 5-year wedding anniversary is actually tomorrow, so we're
Oh,
celebrating big this weekend.
congratulations. That's
Thank
so exciting. Wait, so you guys got married on the 4th of July?
We did.
What? Yeah.
Okay, this is why I have a big family, and my mom
Mhm.
is always like, you guys have to come over every holiday. So this is sort of our excuse to be like, we can't come over. It's our anniversary.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's a good hack there. So
Yeah.
I'm into it. Yeah, and then it's like a good tropical time, But so I guess this year you're just are you hanging out at home though, or what are you doing?
We got an Airbnb in Joshua Tree, so we're gonna leave around 3, just the two of us, and take our dog. I'm gonna disinfect every single thing inside the house
Yeah.
and be good to go, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining. I would love for you to just introduce yourself to all of our viewers, and then we can kind of jump right in.
Okay, awesome. So, viewers, my name's Lauren Ashley. I am an on-air host and journalist living in Los Angeles. And I was also a contestant on Survivor on CBS last season. I was the 4th place finalist, the person that should have won the game. And Survivor gave me a platform to sort of speak to the things that are happening right now. It also allowed me to partner with different brands. And that's sort of what I wanted to talk to you about today. So I'm very grateful to be here. And I'm so thankful that you asked me to do this, Brian.
Yeah, thanks so much. And also, I would just like to let everyone know that we are donating to Lauren's charity, a nonprofit of choice. So that's the Equal Justice Initiative. So, would you like to give us a little bit of background in terms of why you chose that particular organization?
Absolutely. So basically, their job is to end mass incarceration amongst people of color, people that have been wrongfully accused, people that are just sort of sitting in jail for crimes that they shouldn't necessarily be there for. So I think it's a great organization. And if you go to their Instagram, you can see all of the wonderful, amazing people that they've helped. So yeah, I definitely think that that's someone that I want to support. And I'm so glad that we're able to do that.
Yeah, love that. And so MagicLinks will be donating within this session $500 to the For Equal Justice Initiative. So happy to kickstart that off. Everyone would love if you could also please help us to donate. That's a really big part of this, right? I mean, really for Tea Time, we're equally as focused on learning from points of views like yours, and then also really applying all of that, and then sort of bringing it full circle to how can we contribute. So, yeah. With that, okay, so it's sort of funny because we met for the first time actually at your Survivor viewing party. And
Yes.
so, I kind of met you, and you had already wrapped at that point, and it was like right to promo time. So I mean, kind of like walk us through that. Like, what was that like being on Survivor? I mean, I just would love to hear more about it.
So I love Survivor. I've been watching the show since I was 10 years old, and it was a dream of mine to be on the show. And to even get to the point of where I met you at a premiere party for a show that I've loved and looked up to all these people for so many years, it was such a blessing, and I was so grateful for my experience. That being said, I think being a woman of color, going into that experience, watching the show for so many years, you understand sort of how you have to be going into the show. So I was very aware of the stereotypes that are typically placed upon people of color. There's only been one Black female winner out of 20 winners. There's only, in 40 seasons, there's been one female Black winner. So I think that sort of sets the stage when you're going in to know, like, it's it's not that I think that it's like, oh, she's Black, we got to vote her out. I think it comes down to relatability and who you're comfortable with. And I think that a lot of people, even the person that I was closest to on the show, he'll tell you all day, I've never had a friend like you, ever. So I'm grateful that Survivor awarded us that experience. But I think that going into it, I was very aware that I was a Black woman and how I needed to be in order to get further into the game.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's kind of get into it then. So, like, what would you say were the main things that you sort of felt were, or like, okay, let's start with like what you feel like the expectations were. Did you feel like you were set up to kind of be within a character, like a story arc? Because
well, I definitely think this is the thing with Survivor. I love the game. I think that they tend to pigeonhole certain characters. So they do feed into those stereotypes. So typically it's a Black person may be angry or aggressive or lazy. So going into it, I know that this is how a lot of Black people or people of color have been viewed on the show. So I think for me, it was more so, how do I showcase that people of color are all things. We're not just one thing. And I think that the main thing with Survivor is they don't have a lot of people of color working behind the scenes. I think it's important to have representation in front of the camera, but it's also important for the producers that are crafting these wonderful stories to understand. Like, I think it's very difficult for a 45-year-old Caucasian male to be able to tell my story. You know,
right.
I think their job is to craft these stories, and they do a great job at it. But I think if they did have more people of color, it would be easier to tell my story and tell it from my perspective.
Yeah.
When I think about when I auditioned, Brian, there were probably 40 people in the room, and I was the only person of color. And at the time, I didn't think about it. But now when I look back, it's like, wow, like I was the only person of color. When you're on the editing floor, there are no people of color. So when you look at that and you sort of see a pattern, and there has been a lot with Survivor. There has not been a female winner in 6 years. A lot of, I think the past 3 have been Caucasian males. So a lot of people are looking to Survivor that say that you're essentially building a society that's copying America, when that's not exactly what's happening, because we're seeing the same type of winner every single time. So obviously there's some kind of pattern. There's some flaw in the system. And I'm not saying that, listen, the person that won my season, I love him to death, and I'm so proud of him. And I would never want to take away that from him and say, oh, because you're a Caucasian male, you didn't deserve it. But I think that when I look back on the season before me, the 4th place, if you guys don't watch Survivor, the person that's in 4th place is usually the person that is supposed to win this season. So the season before mine, the guy that did it, he was a white male. He was like the face of the season. Everybody loved him. He was great. And he's a wonderful guy. Then you go to my season, and I'm very under edited. I'm very, like, it was very weird. At the end, a lot of people were like, why are people saying that Lauren is such a big threat to win? We haven't seen a lot of her. Why is she such, and nobody knew, because, and I don't feel it was intentional, but I don't feel that they knew how to tell my story. I'm a social butterfly. I love everybody. And I wish that they had shown that part of my game, but I think because they're so used to pigeonholing people, they didn't know how to edit me. And they needed somebody to tell them, like, this is how it should be, you know? And representation is so important. And I hope that going forward, my intention for this, because I know that we talked about that before, is hope. There's a lot of things that are coming out. There's a petition that Black Survivors created that is calling for at least 30% Black, Indigenous people of color to be on all aspects of Survivor, to be in the editing room, to be in the casting, producing, all of that, as well as in front of the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, that's some tea right there. So clink, clink, clink to that. Did you get your starbs? Okay,
I did. Clink, clink.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, it's so interesting to kind of dive into that in terms of like what the behind the scenes, really how that like comes full circle of what you really can sort of pigeonhole someone into. I think when we apply that to our industry, so we're an influencer, right? So we're working with major brands, we're working with, fashion, beauty, lifestyle influencers. And one thing, and I would actually love, I think what you're saying is sort of reinforcing what we already have been talking about, but I'd love your feedback, is, you know, when we're looking at who we cast for campaigns, so it's a little different than casting for a TV show, but there's similarities there. We're looking and we're like starting to really actually take an audit of the influencers that we work with and making a commitment to have solid numbers in place. And then also telling our brand partners like, hey, you need to have the X amount of this representation within the campaign or this isn't going to work for us.
I think that's wonderful. It's important for I want to see Asian American, Indian American, all of the, and not just American. We need to see all different types of people because there are little girls and little boys out there that are looking up and they need to see that person. I remember when I was little, Brian, and Hollister came out. And I was the only Black girl in my graduating class. And oh my God, Hollister is coming out and blah, 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 blah. And I go in and there's all Caucasian models, no one that looks like me. It led me to have body dysmorphia. It led me to feel like I'm not good enough. I think it is so important. And that's why when I work with brands, I'm not trying to work with brands just because I want to get something for free or whatever. I genuinely go after brands that I like. And I think, you know, when you're talking about subscriptions, subscription boxes, without naming names or anything specific, you get these boxes and they have products in them, but they're only tailored to one type of person. I can't use certain products for my hair, you know? I need things that are going to be tailored to African American hair. And I guess it just, I want people to understand that I want to help. If you have questions, ask me. Like, if anything, I think it's important to recognize that we need this representation. We need people to be seen. We need to give people that wouldn't have otherwise been seen a chance. So I'm hoping that that's where the future is headed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess more to that point in terms of the experiences that you've had with brands. So I think, like, you know, so it's your background is in more like traditional media, TV host, like really within red carpets, all of that, which is a little bit, I guess, somewhat far removed from what we do on the influencer side. So we really love having your point of view coming from the other more traditional form of media. Now that, you know, Survivor's wrapped and you've gained some steam on social and you're working with brands, like how has that experience been for you?
I will say the experience has been great. However, I do find that it's more difficult for me because, you know, I connect with other survivors, fellow alumni, and I'm like, oh, what brands do you work with? And I reach out to them and I may not get a response. So like, for example, I had mentioned to you in the past, like things like Revolve. I love Revolve. I love their clothing on all aspects, but I feel like maybe I don't know. I don't know if they think there are women out there just like me that shop there and they want to see that someone that looks just like them is being represented on that platform. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's pushback, but I'm not sure why they're missing the boat on that.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's I mean, even if you look at silly things like their Coachella parties, Brian, it's like all one type of girl and they're beautiful and that's great. But like, can we shake it up? Can I get an invite? You know, like I just feel like we're leaps and bounds from where we need to be. And I hope that going forward, you know, we can do better. And I think as an influencer, this makes me want to do better and represent my community more. And I think about all these like wineries and things that I go to. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and look at Black owned wineries. And I found this amazing Black Girl Magic winery. I'd never heard of it before. And I just want to start supporting and putting more Black businesses out there. And just showcasing that we are, hi, Julia. We are capable. And I think that it's important that as influencers and people that do have platforms, that they do showcase and practice what they preach.
Absolutely. You know, I think like you've hit on so many things. Let's rewind for a second. I want to go back to the Coachella piece because that was some major tea as well. I'm going to take a sip to that because
I love it.
that's like, I mean, and it's interesting this year, right? Because like a lot's happened. So it's like, not only has Black Lives Matter picked up speed over the past month that it has taken years to sort of accumulate. But now we have COVID as well, which has canceled influencer culture kind of, right? Like we've had a lot of accountability come out. We've had all Coachella's canceled. These parties are canceled. Those types of opportunities aren't really the same right now. And so like, I think as it's been an interesting shift from our perspective as brands have like basically lost all of their budgets for like you know, a Revolve party, for example, and then instead now there's all this extra pressure on them to like, where's your diversity, like, you know, like what are you doing, so hopefully this catapults us into the future, you know, like I have hope at least that that's kind of what will be the benefit of this. You know, one thing though about the influencer space that I think is interesting too, when you talk about like a typical you know, maybe like Coachella influencer type, right? It's also like, so there's white girls, there's black girls. It's, you know, it's not like it's just one race, but it's also like it's one type of aesthetic also, right?
Absolutely.
It's and so this kind of reminds me of like, you know, when everyone discovered Beyonce was black, you know, like that's kind of what it reminds me of in a way, where it's just like, why does it have to look and feel a certain way for brands to feel like it's brand friendly? That's where we're really
and then I think that's where we get into like really dangerous territory, because then you have all of these young girls who are idolizing this one aesthetic and this one type of person when we are all different people. And that's the beauty of a community. That's what's great is seeing, you know, so many times when you do see, I hate to boil it down to like Coachella, but when I see someone that's different and she's got like pink braids, I'm like, wow, like that's what I want to see. I want to see something that's different, not the same thing over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a never ending cycle. I think that we're on our end realizing as well with the types of brands that we work with that you brought up a great point as well. Like, right. We have realized within, so MagicLinks is partnered with 4,500 brands. We work with what we would consider to be every brand under the moon, except we don't really have any African-American hair care brands, which is a huge market. This is $1 billion industry.
And that is wild to me. And then I was looking up, I was doing a lot of research. There are a lot of brands like Carol's Daughter, all of these brands, and I'm looking at them and they're owned by non-Black owners. So then I'm like, what is going on? And yeah, that's wild to me, because that the Black hair care industry, it's a major industry.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I want, and this reminds me too. I want to touch on something really quick. There's this new brand at Target. I believe it's called Honeywell or Honey Pot, and it's a hair care brand. And they had
I know what you're talking about.
I think it's Honey. They had a commercial, and it was like, finally, there are these hair care products that are tailored for Black women, and da 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 da. And there was pushback in the comments, like being like, well, I'm never shopping at Target again because it's not fair that you guys are only saying that this is for Honeywell. Okay, someone told me it's Honeywell. I'm so sorry that I got the name wrong. Honeywell or Honey Pot. But there was pushback, and people were saying, well, I'm not shopping at Target anymore because you guys are only tailoring this. Imagine going to Target and having one little section of Black hair care products, and they don't even have what you need. Like, finally, we're getting movement, we're getting something for us, and yet there's still pushback on it. It's wild. It's wild to me. That would be like me saying, I'm going to look at the shelves and there's a bunch of Pantene. Like, there's nothing for me. You know, I just feel like there needs to be more acceptance and more willingness to learn that other people need to be represented on all aspects.
Totally. And I think, you know, like the representation piece is so major, and really it's a huge piece of why we're even doing this series, because it's opening up the floor and really learning from these perspectives. We know that there's just a huge responsibility from our perspective. And I keep saying this over and over again. I feel personally a lot different this time around. Like, every time that you see something in the news, it's always like so upsetting, and I just am frustrated. But there was something about this, and I think for a lot of people, where it just like flipped the switch. You know, and I think like it makes me feel thankful to work in an industry right now and supported by a company where we can really go after these people and really try to strategic relationships and open it up, because it is a representation thing.
Absolutely.
And,
I think now too, we're in a time more than ever where everyone is more connected. Everyone is seeing what's going on. People have their phones out. They're documenting all of these unfortunate things that are happening, which is so important. And maybe that's why we're getting more movement. You know, I think we're a long ways away from where we need to be, obviously, but I definitely see a difference. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I feel a bit of a difference. I mean, from an accountability perspective alone, I think this has been a fantastic year to really kind of call people out on their BS, you know, like it's been interesting. I mean, so like, okay, so I actually want to get back to Survivor a little bit, because I think chat about there. I'm really curious about these story arcs and the lack of representation behind the scenes. So like, when you were on set, what was your personal experience like being were you the only person of color on the entire set, or what was that like for you?
So on my tribe, it was myself and another Black man named Jamal. And then on the other tribe, there were also 2 African-American people, which was unheard of. This is the first time there were 4 African-Americans. And then we also had Indian American, Lebanese. We had one of the most diverse casts. So for that, I am very grateful. Being on the island, yes.
Versus like beginning to now.
From season 1 to season 39, absolutely. They are making changes. However, when I was on the island, all of the producers, just the only 2 people on that island that were of color were myself, and the other guy. Everyone else was Caucasian. And I think that it just makes it difficult to tell our story. I don't know how a producer that is going to craft these stories that cannot relate to me on any level is going to be able to tell my story. You know, I think it's easier for them to pigeonhole me into what the stereotypes are: aggressive, intense, emotional. And that's something also that's very unfortunate, is that it's almost like I had to hold back being myself, because it was like, and the other Black woman on my season, we talked about this. We said we don't want to be seen as this. And that sucks. Why do we have to think about, okay, if we get in an argument with somebody's going to call us aggressive. That's not okay. I feel that we should be able to have our emotions and be authentic and real with those emotions. But we did find ourselves holding back at times because we did not want to. We've seen people before that we've looked up to and admire over the years be sort of pigeonholed into this character, and you can't change. Public perception is everything. Once that's out there, it's very difficult to change. So I was very conscious of that.
You know, Nikki had a great question in the comments in terms of, so being one of the few Black women on Survivor, did you feel a sense of pressure of having to represent an entire community? Because it's kind of like, you know, when there's that little representation, that's tricky, right?
I mean, absolutely. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, I represent all Black people, but absolutely you do. And I think for me specifically, being told my whole life that I didn't fit in, or that I talked white, or that I was very articulate, all these little microaggressions and things that made me very aware.
Yes. Keep going. Sorry.
And it happens to me all the time. This is the thing, Brian. If I'm being completely honest with you, I make excuses. I'm like, oh, wow, like they called me articulate. Instead, I should correct that behavior and say, I'm an educated woman. Why wouldn't I be articulate? What does that mean? Like and what was the expectation, that I wouldn't be articulate? I don't understand. So I think and I think I also need to take some fault and acceptance in that, because I've allowed people in my life to say, oh, she's my Black friend. So no, I'm not racist. I'm not this. I'm not that. And that's not okay at all, ever. So I've committed to this year, especially since everything has started happening. I am not allowing people to do that to me anymore. And in speaking of Survivor and representing people, I wanted to represent myself well. I hope that there were other girls that were just like me, that were looking up to me and being like, if she can do it, I can do it too. And yeah, I'm hoping now with all of the movement, you know, a lot of the survivors and the alumni that I've looked up to have done so many amazing things in regards to this. They've had interviews with NPR. Like I said, they have the petition. There's a lot of movement happening. So it makes me so hopeful for the future of Survivor, the future of TV. I know they're calling on Survivor to do a lot more with their castaways post-show. Like, they've given a lot of opportunities to other survivors, whereas you don't see that with a lot of Black survivors. I told you myself, I'm an on-air host, I'm a journalist. Survivor has put on after shows and things like that. I would love to do that. I would love to do the red carpets for Survivor. I'm a Survivor fan through and through. Why not? Why not have representation out there?
Yeah, and I think that it's not just a Survivor issue. I mean, even with you know, certain streaming platforms like Netflix, who I guess seem to be somewhat more progressive with how they handle, you know, just things in a larger scale. I was watching their new show, The Floor is Lava, I think it's called, or something like that, and it's like crazy game show. And I was watching the first episode, and I'm like, why is the entire cast white? Still, like, of this, you know, it's like, okay, so you filmed this probably last year. And to me, it's just kind of like, to me, that becomes more of an issue of the casting stage as well. Like, you know, work.
what Survivor and a lot of other shows will say is that, okay, well, minorities aren't applying. Well, are we putting these castings in areas where minorities live? Are we pushing this on radio stations that minorities listen to, on news segments? Are we putting it out there for everyone to see? I think it's very weird to say that people of color don't want to play Survivor. We are not just one thing. And I think that goes along with, you know, there's so many stereotypes, like Black people can't swim or whatever. And I think that it's so unfortunate that these things sort of creep into people's minds and they're not allowing minorities the opportunity to even apply. A lot of them don't even know what it is, you know? And I think it's important to push that on all platforms. There was one gentleman who won. He's a Black man. And that season, the only season where there were 3 Black finalists, the host proceeded to say that it was one of the most boring seasons ever, which is, I don't think it was intentional, obviously, but that is irresponsible because the first time he only had, and then he also said that all of the interviews that he did were on K-Rock or country stations. And I've said this before on another podcast, but it's like, we're not listening to that. We need to put it on 1027, 97.1, 105.9, 92.3, like put it in areas that we are going to be exposed to it and give us the opportunity to decide if we want to apply.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and see, I mean, parallel there as well with kind of what we see on our side with, you know, who we're attracting to our network, which, you know, what agencies are we working with and partnering with. It's been a really interesting look of kind of like, where do we need to do the work? You know, last week I was speaking to, I'm not sure if you caught my session last week, but I was speaking to a founder of this really awesome beauty tech platform that basically color matches you to products based off of like your shade. It's amazing. So, you know, we were talking about it even from just the recruitment perspective of like, you know, when we're looking as a company of where to find more diverse people of color to join our team, it's like, it's almost like, how do we drop our name more into these areas where we can really find quality people? Because I think that the assumption is, oh, well, they're not applying. And that's a huge miss. I think that's a huge, huge miss. So we're actively working on that. Obviously, it's coming across a lot of industries. I hope that conversations like these continue to spark, really realizing.
And Brian, I want to thank you. That's the thing that's so wonderful. People that are taking the time to educate themselves and recognize, okay, how can we make this better? What are we doing wrong? Looking at themselves in the mirror. And I think that is so important. And I'm so appreciative of that growth. I really am. And I think that a lot of people are trying to be that way. So I am grateful for that. And I also don't want this to be like, oh, I'm bashing Survivor because I love that game. I want to see change because I love it. And I want more people like me on the show and more Indian Americans and all of that, like I said before.
Well, again, you know, I mean, it's not just a Survivor problem. It's not just a CBS problem. I see it now being a Netflix problem and across the board, you know? And I get that in a way it's like, well, we cast based off of the target demographic for the TV show, right? And it's like, well, that kind of needs to change also. You know, why are we only pigeonholing our audience to one group? So, you know, it's...
Look at things like my dream job. You look at E. There's one Black woman journalist, and that's enough for them. That's enough. Why? We need more. Like, why is that the case? And so I encourage all networks. Like you said, it's not just a Survivor and CBS problem. It's all over the place. You see it everywhere. And I think a lot of people think that they filled that spot because they have the one Black person, but that's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tea.
So get me on a carpet. No.
Oh, right. I mean, it's just, it bugs me from 2 lenses. It bugs me from 1, there's not enough representation, but then 2, once you're in it, it's like you're expected, and you're bringing light to this as well, you're expected to look and act and be a certain way. You know, it makes me wonder, why was the season with, you know, the finalists all on Survivor that was all Black? Like, why was that a boring season? Also, is it because at that point you're almost filtering yourself in a way because you don't want to be perceived by the public as explosive and uneducated and all these like negative qualities? It's so lame, right?
And that's the thing. I want to encourage, let's flip the dynamic. Let's not have it all be negative qualities. I think they have one hero of that show that is Black. Let's make it so there's positive spins on the Black characters in the show. Let's not have it all be negative. And I hope that that's where it's going. I think it is, but
yeah. So what's next for you? Like what's on the docket?
So, we shall see. I was supposed to move to New York. I had gotten a really great opportunity, but then Corona hit literally like a week after I signed that contract. My ultimate dream is to be an investigative journalist. I want to be a host for like 48 hours, Dateline. That's my passion. So I started a little YouTube channel called A Crime a Week where I cover true crime stories. And that's sort of where I'm at right now. I'm targeting investigation, discovery, all of those sort of networks with hopes that I can get some kind of job there.
I love that. You're such a chameleon. I mean, really, it's great to explore different paths and to explore your passions and bring representation to a place like that as well, right?
Absolutely.
Even in investigative journalism, I can't think of any major prominent reporter of color that's on like primetime. Can you? Or are there like really?
There's one. His name is Lester Holt. He is fabulous. He is amazing. I would love to see woman representation.
Right, right.
I think I forgot his name. Oh my gosh, he's on the Today Show. I forgot. There's one more. I believe her name is Deborah. But other than that, it's very, very slim.
Yeah.
So hopefully I can.
Well, we're in the democracy of social video now. That's why we love what we do, because it's like you have your YouTube channel, people can view into you, that you don't need to sign a deal with the network anymore. Like we are really exiting that era in a lot of ways. So
great for people that are creators and want to do things on their own is that they have that opportunity now.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, like Lisa brought up Don Lemon, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
My
Yes.
favorite and Primetime. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
There's a few, but women, I could think of.
Yes, and women representation is very low. But like I look at people like Lisa Ling, like I would love to have that. And I think again, I am pigeonholed into this, oh, she's bubbly and she's cute and whatever. But I want to be taken seriously. And I work very hard at what I do. So hopefully that can be something that's on the horizon for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining. I'll let you go ahead and get back to packing for your amazing Joshua tree. I'm so jealous. I'm like stuck here in LA. Everything's closed.
I know, but that's okay because we'll be healthy, we'll be good. We're practicing our social distancing. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you again for donating to the Equal Justice Initiative. And this was so much fun.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lauren. And then just for everyone, so this is Tea Time. We're here every Friday. We will be back next week with Carmen, who is a lifestyle and fashion influencer from Texas. So we're going to dive into a little bit more of the influencer space and keep the conversation moving. So thanks, Lauren. Bye, everyone. Have a happy 4th of July.
Bye, guys.
Bye.